Well, I'm just double checking what I'm allowed to rant about today. Obviously, it's not my boss.
Anything. Go for it. No, you can give me like
Give you a razzing?
what's it
Give you
called on Reddit? The roast me.
Roasting?
Yeah, roasting. Yeah.
Nah, it's not my style.
I love roast potatoes, Michelle. Hello, welcome back to the Capability Corner. This is the podcast where we explore what's happening in healthcare, workforce development, and all things capability building. I'm Zoe Yule, Head of Learning and Capability at Ausmed. And who have we got here today? Well, as always, look out, everyone. We have Michelle Wickie, Chief Customer Officer. Welcome. Here she is.
I'm here. It's happening.
We have Dr. Karen Patterson, who's dropped the inaugural because she is part of the system. She's part of everything now.
I heard that on the last podcast. You still are the inaugural.
We haven't introduced you yet. Hang on. But let's just get Karen's title correct. Chief Nursing Officer at Ausmed. Welcome back, Karen. But you might have recognised the voice of the fourth person joining us on today's podcast, Mr. Will Egan, CEO of Ausmed. Hello and welcome.
Thank you for having me on here. I'm very much looking forward to this, I have to say. And I am a listener of the show, so it's a pleasure to also be invited on as a guest.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah. We do like to start this show. It's not on our notes that anyone's looking at in front of us, but we do a little, do we need to give a shout out? Because this show's become quite popular. Michelle, we've shouted out Gary enough.
To 7. Yes.
That's great.
This is Rick. I don't know if we're allowed to say organisation names, but hello, Rick, from a large private hospital in Melbourne.
It is great to have you. Great to have you listening. I'm super pumped.
Rick sent me a fan email this week, and now Rick's getting another shout out.
All right, look out. Here we go. Well, anyway, Rick, it's great to have you. Whichever Rick you are, great to have you listening, and we're all hearing that you're loving it, which is great.
Fantastic. Karen, you've got lots of friends, lots of followers in the world. Lots of people reach out to you on LinkedIn celebrating the podcast.
I did have a mentor call. I'm mentoring a person who is currently working at the Independent Pricing Commission, and he was listening to the podcast, and we had a little chat because I talked to him about, obviously stepping into places that make you feel uncomfortable, taking opportunities to use your voice, apart from there. And
are you suggesting it's uncomfortable stepping into our
workplace?
I think she was saying uncomfortable doing a podcast with Michelle Wickie, actually.
Well, that makes a whole lot more sense.
So I'm practicing what I preach is the part from there, from my perspective anyway, and that's where it's everyone has their own challenges.
Karen, I don't think this is new anymore. You're an absolute pro at doing podcasts, even with Michelle Wickie.
Every time we do this, it's new, Zoe.
It's only new the first one or two times. Quick whip around. How are we all doing? What's everyone been up to?
Well, actually, and it's connected to my other role that we've talked about, which is with the Australasian College of Health Service Management. As a board delegate, I'm on the National Rural Health Alliance, and that is a membership organisation from people. So some of our colleagues from the Australian College of Nursing, the Australian Nurse Practitioners Group, Ageing Australia, large organisations, and they are a policy advocacy group, and it's looking around rural and remote. And they were launching a report that was written around the difference between costing of healthcare in rural and regional in comparison to metropolitan areas. And, obviously that Australia depends economically a lot on our rural and regional areas, except, how we then support those areas. There's a huge variation in that. So it was fun. I went to go to Parliament House. We had, the honourables there, and and then I had to try and get out of Parliament House, which was even more fun.
You didn't take a little ride down the green slopes on some cardboard, Kaz?
No.
There's fences, I think, now.
What?
Yeah.
That was in
Since
my
you've
day.
been there, Michelle.
It's been a while then since I've been, flying down those
You
hills.
have been somewhere pretty special the last week.
I went to Benelong, which is a restaurant in one of the sales of the Opera House, and we were talking about AI in customer experience, which is super cool. I am going to touch on a little bit of that in my rant later today, but not because it wasn't a good experience. Food, lovely. People, pretty good. Conversation, insightful-ish. So that was good. Insightful-ish. That's a word.
What have you been up to, Will?
Oh, I think the topic of this talk really, it's just trying to get deep into the weeds around generative AI. We've got this event coming up on the sidelines of the Aging Australia conference in the Gold Coast, and it's the first event that we've seen out there that's really focusing on AI in aged care, and we've released it because we wanted to just see if there was actual interest. And I just checked with Nathan, who's organising that, and Laura before this meeting. We've got 16 tickets left, so that's really exciting. There's actual interest in this topic.
For the remainder of the 16 tickets, how can our listeners get a hold of them? What do they need to do?
ausmed.com.au/organisations
By the time this
/AI.
went live, they're gone. They're
We'll
gone.
put the link
Yeah.
somewhere.
But if this event works,
definitely
which it
jump
has, the deal was we'd run one in each of the other capital cities over the next 6 months.
Fantastic. All right. So evening before the National Aging Australia Conference on the Gold Coast, be there or you will miss out. You will have FOMO and you'll have to wait till the next one. But we are really excited for that event. But let's do a direct segue into the main topic of today's conversation. And if you haven't guessed it, it's AI. Now,
Pause,
I've
pause,
been hanging
pause
out
of
for this one.
excitement.
We love AI, and I've adopted Michelle's lovable term for ChatGPT, Chappy. Robbie and Will. Robbie is our
We've got a pact between us
Yeah.
that we don't use that term. But I
Robbie's
have
the
named
Chief
my
Product
AI
Officer.
Chappy. So
okay.
You're
Mine's
the only
Emma.
ones. You stubborn boys. There's someone else that messaged me the other day, said, I will never use that word, chappy. So I said, okay,
great.
well, you either love it or you hate it.
And I want to start by asking, why does AI matter to healthcare? What does it unlock? What are the potentials of it? And I'm going to throw to you first, Will.
essentially, governments all around the world, in the context of health, we're talking about governments, but this is true in corporate environments as well, a company or any other environment, academic setting. We're seeking efficiencies. That's what we're after. We want to be employers, places of work where people get to do high value work and then therefore earn high value pay. But still, so much of the way the wheels turn around is people clicking a button or copying and pasting something from here and putting it there, downloading a spreadsheet, transforming it. So the promise of AI is that maybe some of that work goes away. And if it does, it improves the productivity of that sector or that company. And if that happens, then more good stuff happens. Like every technology disruption, that's what it is at its core. It's about stopping the old way of doing it and starting the new way, replacing the old technology with the new, and in pursuit of that, improving the performance of human labour and human effort in the economy or in a healthcare system. And healthcare needs that because healthcare is a people business. 1 in 8 people in the country are employed in a healthcare setting. It's the largest employer. Healthcare happens when people do things. It doesn't happen when computers beep and blink and integrations and zaps run off. It happens when someone's hands, do something for someone or to someone, someone.
Unless you're on a ventilator in ICU and then you really want the beeps and the machine
Yeah,
to be working.
That's true.
I think what you're trying to say is that central to AI is the potential that it unlocks is productivity. And the way that we are thinking about the opportunity around AI is to augment human work. It's not to outsource, it's not to replace, it's to actually unlock and enable the work that people do. And we appreciate within healthcare, it is a people business and people are at the heart. The connections that people have between a clinician and a patient in whatever setting is critical. And in times of need, that's what people need. But imagine if we could do that more productively and more efficiently. You know, I think back to being in intensive care where there's no way you ever got through all of the task lists that you had on your handover sheet. So imagine if there was a world where we could do what we wanted to do with a bit more speed, with a bit more depth, with a bit more support, with a bit more opportunity for critical reflection, judgment, critical reasoning. Imagine that world, and what I feel is that there's potential here for AI to help move us into a future where more of that is possible.
I think people do find it hard to imagine. So that's where I think some of the tension is, because when they imagine technology or augmentation or parts from there, they think robots or things that are going to replace humans. Health is very risk averse. Health does take a long time to change.
We've never discussed that before.
And so I think, the technology changes are really disruptive, like particularly in healthcare. There is still a big differentiation between the health professional and the health personal. So they might have lots of personal AI engagements, but being able to think about how they bring that into their work is, there's just barriers there to doing that.
I completely agree with you about the barriers, Karen. I guess something that I'm finding is that the talk is still so big and blue sky and philosophical, and we're not drilling down into the how. And when I think about aged care, because it's easy for me to think about aged care, where do we apply AI in that health space to make our work more productive or to scale on the repeatable stuff we have to do? I had a conversation I was probably 3 or 4 years ago, really heated conversation at my mother's group. I was having an argument with a teacher who was
I thought you said it was a conversation, Michelle.
Oh, no, I've never had conversations. It's either like argument or no talking. Anyway, so it's over.
It's true.
She's just like, there's no place for AI in teaching. And I was like, what the are you talking about? And she's like, you would never be able to customise a lesson plan, because this is how she talks. You would never be able to customise a lesson plan for a child that, is on the spectrum or that has specific learning needs, and AI would have no idea how to do that. And I'm just going, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Why are you not exploring this and leveraging this? And now we are finally hearing more massive people. In fact, a number of schools in Queensland are running innovations where they actually are running lesson plans for each individual child so that they don't have to get lost in the weeds and can actually just do the teaching and apply the lesson plans. The same happens with a care manager or an RN. You might be talking about an individual consumer has very individual rights, and we want to absolutely respect the dignity and the uniqueness of that person. But the beauty of AI is that it is so advanced that if you can work it, if you have taught or been taught properly, if you have learned, if you have trialed and errored, you can work out how to make your notes customized and still scalable with all the notes that you have to write at the end of the day, with all the processes, with all the complaints responses, with all the emails back to the families, with all of the uplift into the SIRS documents. They are customized, they are still human focused, they are still person centered, and yet they're scalable and more productive. But then the problem comes to systems and institutions and trust for those systems, and whether the organisation or the people themselves have the trust that they can input the data and know that it's not going outside their cloud or not going outside their, their closed circuit and worrying about confidentiality. And so there's this big gap between, firstly, what can you do in terms of you have the access and the ability to do it because the institution or the systems or IT is supporting you, and then what do you trust to be able to implement those things? And I don't think we've got the system piece right, and we don't have the trust piece right. Not right, but it's not there yet. People are still...
Yeah.
It's not matured to a point yet.
Yeah, they're held back by the system, or they're held back by their own level of trust. And those are the barriers that we should be pushing and informing on and teaching and exploring, so that we build those two into place much stronger, and we can engage in the productivity that we're all agreeing is there, but we're not harnessing yet.
And I think, Michelle, one of the things is it's not about handing over responsibility or accountability to something. Like, it actually is, the accountability still sits with the person. And that's where from a governance perspective, that's a really important element. The AI, it learns from databases that are from human content and has been entered from there. So it actually amplifies a lot of the stereotypes and biases and, you know, all the things that are human, because it draws on everything and it can bring it together in a non-linear way. The need for accountability for people to be able to review the content of, you know, the notes that are presented, etc., from there, for its accuracy and for its relevance and bias, etc., from there.
I think even on this conversation, on this podcast, we'll probably move through kind of 3 stages that most people and organizations move through, which is the fear and the kind of risks this technology shift brings up. I think second is like the opportunities. You know, once you move past that, you start to find those opportunities or places for that it could be useful. And then the third is the implementation and the how and the ongoing governance or surveillance of that technology. A lot of conversations we're having at the moment are still very much in the fear. And, you know, the concept here really is around the ethical use of AI. So for me, some of the things that feed into that fear is, one, we do find ourselves in this position again as a society where a technology shift is being foisted upon us by corporations at the end of the day. This is not a government that's making this change. And that's also a feature of technology. You know, technology is perpetrated by oligarchs, essentially, which is kind of a new form of global governing of populations. AI is interesting because it's an expensive thing to produce. It requires GPUs, which, you know, by all intents and purposes, we don't have access to enough of them in Australia. You mentioned biases earlier, Karen. They don't just have biases, they have US-based biases. But like they're predominantly trained on US models. It's why the output continues to put Zs or Zs in places of S's where we'd prefer the S. You know, we're not even at the point yet where we have really a local at scale Australian large language model to use in the Australian context. So, you know, that's how kind of much this is in its infancy. These models are ungoverned at their core. They're owned by private companies. They are not Australian centric. We will see improvements in those areas come from those technologies over time if government does regulate in some way or another. But that's a big part of this whole value proposition that's really out of control. The last part of that fear is, will it take my job? Right? So it's like it's uncontrollable. How do I know it's accurate? And ultimately, the ultimate fear, in my view, is, will it take my job? If I allow this machinery into the farm, do I still have a job? And the truth of all in industrial or technological revolutions or evolutions so far is that, yes, you have a job, you just have a different job. Parts of your job you used to do will go and new bits will be added.
I'd love to move into that second wave where we're talking less about fear and individual responses that are, you know, very important, but maybe more so into the opportunity, particularly around generative learning, because while there's lots of opportunities to think about, whether at that blue sky or operationally within healthcare around AI, we are operating in this, I guess, adjunct space around workforce capability, learning, and, you know, it's a little different to the actual hands-on care that's being provided in a hospital or in aged care. So maybe I'll throw to you to begin with, Michelle, and ask, you know, when it comes to learning within health and aged care, how do you see generative technologies and AI improving the learning experience?
I think there's a lot to be said around, you know, the discussions so far in terms of reflective practice. I think we do, you know, without trying to completely dismiss this concept of like learning styles and different people's ability to learn in different ways and all that, you know, kinetic rubbish. Without doing
trying
that,
to dismiss it.
That's right. I'm not trying to invalidate people's perception of this rubbish stuff called kinetic learning. I think that we all, as a general cohort, we all process information and grow and pivot, learn, adjust, evolve from some kind of reflection, usually with a another being or experience, right? So like if we drill it down to that, I think that this concept of kind of reflective learning is a great place to be. I think we're going to pick up the majority of learners getting a productive experience and evolving their learning or their growth minds, you know, their mindset if we have some kind of reflection. So I think that's a really great place that I'm seeing us move. So I think that's really good, and I think being able to talk through our experience of the shift or our interaction with that annoying family or that problem with that care worker that didn't do what I said, or questioned why I said don't give that PRN now, give it in an hour. You know, why would they have thought that? What's another way to think about it? This is why I wanted to do it. What are your thoughts? Like some kind of generative reflective conversation. I think we can learn quite well that way. It's not going to take away the concept that we still need to be creating cultures of learning, cultures of open mindset, growth mindset. We need to, within our organisations, be ensuring that people are interested in that engagement, want to learn through that way, want to change and grow and evolve in their practice. So there's so much to be said for ensuring that you have this change management and cultural piece that is still focused on learning while we leverage what could be some really great reflective practice to do that. And I think that's a great place for us to kind of find our foundations in Gen AI in the learning space.
What excites me, it's bringing learning to life in different ways. The generative AI will bring a bit of fun and a bit of that excitement into learning as well, and also the real time and reality components of it. So being able to have, you know, a technology that can bring a learning experience to life, and you can place yourself in that experience and engage in reflection in regard to, well, how did that feel for me, and what is it that I've identified that I'm good at, or I need to get better at, or find out from there. I think it's just really opening up a space that's been, you know, quite traditional for a very long time, and
for innovation.
Yeah.
And traditional because we're limited by the technology fundamentally. In the face-to-face learning area, reflection happened at the end of every session in the conferences. They'd be facilitated by the educator, whoever that may be. In the online learning, though, that doesn't scale, or it hasn't until now. So all of the technologies that we have available to us essentially stem from a SQL database, which is like a big spreadsheet, like a CSV file. And the reality is we put information in it, and then we use a web interface or an app to pull that information out and present it in a, ordered and understandable way. When we design a module, we know exactly what's in there, 100% of it. When a multiple choice question's presented, we know what the answer is. There's no ambiguity. There's not really time to deliberate over the answer. There's definitely not time to reflect. Enter the LLM. The LLM is a database that you don't have to put information in. It's all already there. You just ask this database for what you need, right? And it turns out if you give the database a user's response to something, plus a way to appraise that response, the LLM is uncannily good at giving constructive feedback or starting to engage in what Karen's referring to as a much more tutor-led or tutor-like learning experience, a one-to-one, a simulation. We can start to get interactive for the first time. That's what gets us excited about this at Ausmed, and it's definitely why we're allocating a lot of effort and energy towards it. I think a few important things to add to this are, when you think about generative AI, it's not just AI, it's a subset of AI that's generative, built on large language models. AI is already ubiquitous and everywhere. The latest, your face scanning on your phone as an example, the audio modulation that's going on this call is probably using it in some way. But the LLM iteration of AI that spawned off ChatGPT, where information can be prompted or produced, is like a big shift. And two is the verbal interface, right, which is what we're referring to when we talk to Chappy. Siri is where that was up to previously, 10 years ago. I mean, Siri's like a really bad example. There's been evolution since then.
Siri is shocking.
It's shocking.
Siri doesn't listen to anyone.
It's almost trolling
no offense,
you.
Siri.
It's like, turn the lights on. It's like you don't have any lights in your house. You go to turn it on, it says they're already on, and turns them on. Halfway through, you ask him to do it again.
Let's be fair. Siri can set a timer, and Siri can tell the time. but that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. But Siri is programmed language, right? So those are all learnt, like essentially programmed statements that it responds to. Whereas the verbal interface now is basically just a voice layer sitting on top of an LLM. So those two things together are very interesting, very exciting.
So I think we've covered really, really well. We've touched on some of the risks that sit around AI, but tried to unpack them in somewhat of a logical manner to really understand them. I think when we understand the risks, when we understand fear, when we unpack it, it makes that change just make sense. And that helps enormously. Hopefully our listeners have had a bit of a window, a bit of an insight into the opportunities that sit around AI, particularly how we're thinking about it, Ausmed, from a generative learning perspective. I think we've all got to get better at having that roll off the tongue, particularly myself. But one thing we haven't touched on, which may be a conversation we need to have in another episode, because I think there's double the amount of content that we could be talking about, is around governance when it comes to AI. We don't talk about AI at Ausmed if we're not talking about governance. The two topics sit together.
Yeah, I think we need to do a part 2 on governance, because the opposite of the fear, dealing with the fear, is, well, you can govern it. There's ways to do that. And as they become apparent, the fear subsides.
So I think we are going to come back to this conversation. Stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to cover the governance that sits around AI. We're going to introduce you or go through some of the concepts like human in the loop, reviews, audit trails, risk scoring into AI workflows, guardrails. There is so much that we're learning and building our knowledge of that sit around the governance level of AI that I'm excited to tap into. But without further ado, your favourite time of the episode, it's Wiki's Rant.
Yeah. God, it's a big one today, but I'm going to try and keep it really short. I am so sick of going to AI catch-ups and events where people are talking, are not moving anywhere. We hear the same thing about, like, what are you doing in AI? What are you doing in AI? And all the people that are going there still are doing nothing. They listen and murmur and have the good drinks and have the lovely food and then go back and still do nothing. I'm so sick of it. And so here is my call out, like call to action. CEOs that are all bloody talk, actually role model, please. Make a strategy, implement something in your scope of practice and show that you are making change in your organisation. C-suite people, start advocating for the systems and processes that you can then embed in your teams, in your functions, so that the organisation works together en masse as herd mentality. And anyone less than C-suite, so those managers, those heads of, those general managers, and yes, all the people doing the hard labour at the desk, start doing it. Start trying it. Dip your toe in. Turn the AI agent on. Look up Chappie when you're writing those notes. Try anything, but actually start moving forward. Stop standing here and listening to the conversation about it, but not actually going anywhere. Because I can tell you the number of people that are just listeners in this space are massive and haven't moved anywhere. And the only people that are moving are the software developers who are trying to embed AI and creating the software, but still trying to sell to people that are too frozen to move anywhere. So stop it. Do something. Do something. Do anything. That's it. Rant over.
I love it. You didn't even have any notes for that rant. That was just pure actual rant. I love it. I agree, Michelle, but I always agree with your rants. I think they make sense, and I think you just say it how everyone is saying it. Maybe you'd like to speak on behalf of yourself or the other CEOs and C-suites that Michelle's just had a rant about. Go for it, Will.
I think I'm always open to feedback from Michelle, and that's important because it's great. It is great feedback. We're doing a pretty good job trying to incorporate it into our products. The constraints that we do have are what Michelle alluded to the end. The customer. Does the customer want it? Is it talk or will they take action? Because there is new risk. It can be mitigated, but it's a different risk profile. The other one is how much of our business resource across our workforce gets allocated to exploring this. Right? So it's not, there's projects we've done where there's been $0 return, lots spent, lots of effort, $0 back from an AI project. And then there's others that are the inverse, almost nothing spent, massive gain. And I think it's that uncertainty that means you can't just green light this stuff. And it's not a so keep not doing anything. Like you got to move, but you got to say, okay, 5% of a budget or 5% of projects in the next quarter need to be focused on something with AI, right? Managed by constraint, limit the business's overall exposure to those. And as you start to see success happening, people, projects working, you can dial that up and you can go bigger. And we're kind of at that juncture at the moment. We've found some really extraordinary learning paradigms that we can offer through generative AI. And now we need to, scale that team up big time so that we can deliver it fast. So I think focus is king, speed is queen. Focus first and then move fast when you've got something.
We might even have Will Egan back. I think you've been a fabulous addition and taught us so many new things and reinforced some of the really big opportunities that sit around AI. So thanks, Will, for joining us on today's episode of the Capability Corner.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. All right. Huge thanks to Will Egan for joining us. And as always, Karen, thank you. Michelle, thank you. Make sure that you register for our Building Workforce Capability with AI hosted by Ausmed on Monday the 29th of September on the Gold Coast. Remember, there's 16 tickets left, but by the time you finish this podcast episode, it may only be 1 or 2. So get in there, be quick. Please register your interest. If you do miss out on this event, it does take a waiting list, I believe, and we'll be able to look at the interest and scale this to a series of events in the future.
Road trip.
But
Yep.
Obviously, road trip. Woo-woo.
I think I'd also say it's not limited because we're trying to create scarcity. Like, there's a literal physical limit to the venue.
Yeah.
It's not online. So it's a venue that has seats and there's only a certain number of seats.
Yes, but do get in and register now.
Definitely.
With marketing, we've got to create the urgency here. But we will be obviously at the Aging Australia conference too. And you will hear, no doubt, from Will during his conference address at that event. So come find us, say hi. We look forward to chatting about how generative learning is absolutely within and a part of the future of learning and care. So thanks for joining us for today's episode and see you next time.
Thank you.
See ya.